So I'm working on the rear brakes for a 2001 Volvo S40, and it has the type of piston that you have to rotate inward instead of just pressing in, which I would usually use a C-clamp or big pliers for. And so I don't have the tool to rotate this in, which is actually fairly complicated. And you can rent them from auto parts stores, but one, the auto stores around here don't really rent parts, and two, they're far away because I'm in the middle of nowhere. So I actually created tools to do it myself. So the first tool that I made is this one right here. This is actually made from a single piece of steel, and I folded the handle in, and then I cut out the head, and I welded two lugs on it, which are just pieces of steel rod. So I have a cheap, crappy welder, and I have hammers, and I have a cutting wheel on an angle grinder, and this is what I came up with. I thought I needed it to be a little more heavy duty because to me it seemed like if you needed a custom tool you're probably going to have to put some force on this thing. It's actually relatively easy. But so when I first started using this thing, I did it on the other side first, but I realized that turning this thing is kind of a pain in the butt with this because it gets in the way, and also I would have had to turn it. See, once you get it in the lugs, you turn it like this, but I would have had to turn it and then take it off and then turn it. So looking at the tools you can usually rent, I replicated one and I made this. It's got the same two lugs, just a square, slightly thicker piece of steel for strength, and then I just welded it in a socket. It's a 15 millimeter. Who uses 15 millimeter, right? Master craftsman, awesome. And so I made this tool, which is more like the ones you get at the auto parts stores, and you put it on an extension, of course. The lugs lock in, and you rotate it if you have your ratchet in the right direction. Like that. Now the problem with this one is that, one, it hurts my wrist after a while, and two, you have to apply inward pressure, which I didn't really know. I thought it would screw itself in. So I did more research, and the real tool for it presses in while you actually turn another handle that presses the piston while turning it. It's really complicated. So what I do to replicate that is I use a combination of tools that I have. So what I do is I use my longer tool. I get it set up with the lugs, if I can find them. And then I use one of these piston compressors for a standard brake job. Now I'm only going to be able to get one small turn here, but you'll get the idea. Put some pressure on it, and then turn this a little bit. And then put some pressure on it, and you can tell it's going in because you can put more on it. Turn it a little bit. Put some pressure on it. So in this case, and then I just release it. Enough to get the lugs out. If you use some fancy handiwork, sometimes you can keep everything together. Slide it in. Get it on the lugs. Start to tighten it down. Will help hold everything in place. And you can see I'm almost all the way in now anyways, but apply some pressure and you start to turn it. Apply some pressure. This spot's a little bit tricky because everything gets in the way, but turn it some more and just get it past this. Apply some pressure. Turn it. Apply some pressure. Just like that. And it only takes around maybe 3 times taking this off and doing this process to actually get it all the way in. So it worked pretty dang well. I'm still glad I have this tool, but it's just that it requires a lot of force. And so, although you may not have a welder, you could replicate this a few different ways. You could actually screw some bolts through a piece of steel that you drilled through and some nuts on them, and then apply one of these brake piston calipers or a C-clamp. It would all be pretty fiddly, but you could definitely do it. Or even just a vice grips around 2 bolts that lock into the lugs, and then you could put the compressor or the C-clip on the vice grips while you turn it. Although saying that, I remember that using a C-clamp on these is pretty hard because of all the e-brake assembly. But if you had a really big one, you might be able to do it. So either way, there are some ways you could do it. I definitely recommend buying one of these for this kind of job and for piston jobs, because I've done it with C-clamps and big pliers for a long time. They're like $7 or $8 on Amazon. And then with a vice grips and some bolts, you could lock it into the lugs, use this thing, and use the same method, and it gets it done in probably less than 10 minutes, whereas I was fighting with it with this thing and with just the other thing for about 30 minutes. But yeah, this is just a nice example of how you can make some nifty tools at home when the auto parts stores are far away, there's no Volvo dealer nearby, and you need to get something done. Thanks.